What's up, guys? I am Laura from Reading in Bed, and I was gonna do a video about this whole reader's fatigue brouhaha that's been going on here on BookTube, and I even had notes and things sketched out, and it was gonna be, basically what I thought the problem was. What everyone's doing wrong that's causing them to have this reader's fatigue and all this angst and stuff. But then I saw that Mercy's Bookish Musings had posted a follow-up video. And while I haven't watched the video yet, I did scroll down to the comments, and it seems like people have a lot of closure now. There's a lot of warm and fuzzy feelings and kumbaya vibes in that comment section. So do I really want to come in with a snarky video that, if you didn't know me, might come across as a little bitchy? No, I don't think I do. I'm not going to go there. But I am going to excise just one point, one little bit, and expand on it a bit, because it may be of interest. And that was some thoughts and some nostalgia about the way we used to read, or at least the way I used to read prior to all this. And I started from a place of, well, what was reading like before book blogging and before BookTube? But when I really considered my reading life, that wasn't the point where things changed. The point where things changed happened a couple of years prior to that. And the year that I sort of pin it to is significant, and we'll get there. But so I don't think it's so much blogging and booktubing as it is the advent of social media and smartphones and stuff like that. Like when I laid it out, the year 2007 is the one that kind of crops up for me, and yeah, I mean, that's when they started letting us old farts onto Facebook. Okay, I'll take you back a bit. I'm considering my reading career as an adult to have started when I was about 19. So we'll say the year 2000. And one of the first books that I think of when I think of my, reading as a grown-up or as an adult is this one, Mercy Among the Children by David Adams Richards. So I did read this when I was 19, and it was just, I remember thinking like, wow, this is a really serious book. It's for grown-ups, and I really liked it. So that means, I'm a serious reader now. I mean, I'd been reading adult books for years, but there was something different about this one. So that's kind of the beginning for me. And at that time, I was reading a lot of John Irving, really gone back into the archives of my bookshelves here. I was reading Irvin Welsh. I remember reading Angela's Ashes around that time, probably in the year 2000. There's another John Irving, so I had a lot of these mass market paperbacks. My reading life was really centered around the secondhand bookstore that I lived a couple blocks away from. I would go in there and I would just pick up like whatever hardcovers they might have displayed near the front, get those for around 10, 11 bucks. Or I would go over to the classics section and I would pick up, the little paperbacks. This one, yeah, it was $2.50. That was kind of the standard. This is Sister Carrie by Theodore Dreiser. And this one sticks out for me. I mean, I have a ton of these kind of paperbacks from that period of my life. This one stuck out because I'd never heard of it. Totally picked it up on a whim. The cover's not even that appealing, but there's something about the title. And when I read it, like, this is basically Sex and the City set in, published in 1900. It's Sex and the City set in the early 1900s, and her name's even Carrie. It was just so great. So I was reading a lot of this kind of stuff too. And reading was, I mean, it's something I did at the end of the day. I certainly wasn't carting books around with me everywhere like I do now. I did not track my reading in any way, anywhere. I didn't rate the books I read, because why would I, in the absence of Goodreads, who was even asking for a rating? I did not plan my reading. I did not have a TBR. I did not know what TBR stood for. I did not do any projects. I did not do read-alongs. I was not in a book club. The only person that I really talked to about my reading was my mom. We would share books. She introduced me to, I don't have it on me, but like the Otherland series by Tad Williams, and I don't know, probably lots of others. She's like the one person I would talk to occasionally about reading. None of the guys I dated were readers. Even my husband, who I met when I was 23, so kind of around this time, was not a reader at the time. He reads now. My influence, right? But at the time, he didn't read it all, and I didn't care. It's not like I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. Reading was something I did. People knew that I liked books, and it was sort of part of my identity in a way, I guess. But it was just something very low-key that I did for myself, and I kept to myself for the most part, and I was fine. I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything. I didn't want anything more. And one example, I guess, I can give from this period, going back to Mercy Among the Children. So this author was being honored at the university I was attending, at Grant MacEwan. This book was like their book of the year, which they still do. This was probably in the year 2000, and my dad heard about that, and he said, Laura, you got to go to this and go get the book signed, because it was my dad's book that I had read. He said, go get this signed. And I was like, first of all, I don't want to, because I'm still an introvert, but back then I was also very shy. I couldn't imagine what on earth I would say to this man, or I thought I would just make a fool of myself or whatever. But I also couldn't, I just didn't understand why anyone would want to, even if you weren't a shy person. For me, books just sprang out of the ether. I didn't even consider that they had authors and publishers and all this other stuff going on. I just, to me, there was no reason for me to do that, and it was a really odd thing. I was not part of the scene at all, obviously. So I didn't go. Now, if David Adams Richards came to Edmonton again, I would be like, all right, I'm gonna grab my 10 books by him and I'm gonna be first in line. And I will probably still make a fool of myself. But okay, so that's, the early years of the millennium. That's what reading was like for me. Things changed, as I mentioned, in 2007. That's when I picked this bad boy up, the 1001 Books You Must Read Before You Die. So this is the first edition of that book, and I hope I'm not wrong, I think this came out in 2007. Yeah, 2007. So I just picked this up at a bookstore, again on a whim. It wasn't because I was planning to do a project with it or anything like that, but I got this, I read it, I counted up how many books I had read, and it was the first time I had really asked myself questions like, am I actually well read? Am I actually a serious reader? Would the people who wrote this book or the other people who own this book think that I'm a serious reader? And my total was, I want to say around 55 of the 1001. And I felt bad about that. I felt shame. I was like, geez, I haven't read anything. And so I embarked on a very informal and casual mission to increase the number of books that I'd read from the 1001 Books. So that was one thing that happened in 2007. The other thing that happened in 2008 is that I got engaged and I started planning a wedding. And I started thinking about, do I want to include any bookish things in my wedding? And I didn't really end up doing much because I didn't want to make it all about me, even though obviously it was. But what I did do is I planned the books that I wanted to take with me on my honeymoon. And again, this was a first. Of course, I would always take books with me if I went on a vacation, but I'd be just as likely to just buy magazines at the airport. It wasn't an event that I would plan for, but for my honeymoon, I did. I decided I wanted to have one classic, and I wanted to have one book that was set on a beach, and I wanted to have one trashy book. And I can't remember what the trashy book was, which is really sad, but I do remember and still own one of the classics I took was Roxana. The other one was Moll Flanders, which I couldn't find, and the book set on a beach was The Rum Diaries. So you can see both of these from the price tags also came from that same secondhand bookstore. This was $8.90 for some reason. And so I was planning this reading event that was going to happen on my honeymoon. And I don't think it's a coincidence that I also knew that pictures of that would be posted on Facebook. The other thing I want to mention about Facebook in the early days of Facebook was notes. Okay, so notes were sort of, they were almost like chain letters at that point. They would be like quizzes and little things that you could respond to. And there were two that I remember quite clearly. One was a list of, I don't know, like 100 books or something, and you had to count how many you read. So similar to the 1001, but like just making it more public. Like I had to count it up. And I think that one I had a good total. So I was like feeling good, like, yeah, I'm well read. The other was, it was something like, don't think about it too much, just post 5 authors or 5 books that made a difference in your life. And I remember sitting there totally thinking about it because it's going to be posted and people are going to see it and people might have opinions about what you read and what you consider to be a good book. And though, like, all of that, like these lists and, you know, planning TBRs and posting things, this was all brand new. And yeah, I mean, like, to me, that is the change. I didn't start blogging for another 3 or 4 years, but I think it was just in the air. And I think it was really social media and the fact that people suddenly had, you know, phones and ways to sort of interact this way that changed things, that changed reading from a private event to a public spectacle, into something that is shared and commented on, and it's for public consumption. It's no longer just a private activity. So, and I know none of this is exactly groundbreaking. We all know this. Those of us old enough to remember life before social media, or God forbid, life before the internet. It's like, it's not just reading, it's everything. Everything has become for public consumption now. But what I was thinking about is, like, what have we lost? Like, have we lost anything? Was there value in reading just being for ourselves and just being private? And if so, is there a way to reclaim any of that? And would it maybe ease some of this angst that we're all feeling? So I don't know the answers to that. I know that, you know, reading kind of before all of this was my favorite thing to do, and it still is. So, like, that hasn't changed. And I know I've met a lot of great people and had a lot of great opportunities because of the community and the social aspect of reading, and I wouldn't trade those. And I think it's hard to answer the question, because before all of this, I didn't even really think of reading as a separate thing to talk about. It was just like, it was just there. It was just something I did. So I have been considering maybe just going dark for a bit in the new year. Not in December, because obviously I'm doing daily videos, but maybe in January, maybe for a whole month, maybe longer, just shutting it down. And I do social media breaks periodically anyway. But I mean, really, like, not updating Goodreads, not telling people, except maybe people in real life, what I'm reading, no Instagram stories, nothing. And no cheating by doing a big comeback at the end and, like, here's all the stuff I read, but just wiping out a period of time from the public reading record and seeing what that feels like. I don't know. I mean, is that a crazy idea? Is it a stupid idea? I was considering, you know, I usually do a social media break at the beginning of the year anyway, so it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So I might just try it. I might try it, and, you know, then afterwards I can tell you if I gained anything or if it felt different. But anyways, I would love to hear what you guys think. If you are old enough to remember reading, you know, pre-blog, pre-internet, pre-social media, and if you think it was different, and if you know, do you have nostalgia for that time? Do you think it was better? Do you think it was worse? And have you, or would you ever consider sort of taking a break, like more than a social media break, but like a break from reading as a public spectacle? Or am I just nuts? Okay, thanks for watching, guys.